Every day, your brain faces choices, some easy, some tough. It wants comfort, ease, and safety. But real growth and success come from doing the hard things, even when your mind fights back. This book is about breaking through that resistance. It's about training your brain to act, even when motivation is low, fear is high, or distractions pull you away. You'll learn how to build habits that push you forward, how to quiet excuses before they even start, and how to keep going when giving up feels easier. This is not about quick fixes or magic solutions. It's about practical steps that help you become stronger, more disciplined, and more confident every single day. If you want to take control of your mind and live a life where hard work becomes your path, then this is the guide you've been waiting for. Stick with me and you'll discover how to turn challenges into stepping stones and frustration into progress. Chapter 1. Train your mind to act without waiting for motivation. Most people wait for motivation. They wait for that perfect feeling to rise inside them, the spark, the drive, the sudden burst of energy that will finally push them to take action. But the truth is, waiting for motivation is the exact reason why so many goals are left unfinished, why dreams get delayed, and why people stay stuck. The brain loves comfort. It will always find a reason to keep you in bed longer, to scroll a little more, to push important work to tomorrow. And if you let motivation be the driver of your actions, you'll always be at its mercy. The ability to do hard things without waiting to feel like it is not natural. It's trained. It's built one decision at a time. Action is not supposed to feel easy. It's not meant to always feel good. It's meant to get done, and the way you train your mind to act, especially when you don't feel ready or inspired, is by removing the belief that you need to feel a certain way in order to begin. You don't need to be in the mood to do the right thing. You just need to start. The beginning is where resistance lives. The hardest part of any task is the first few minutes, the mental push, the shift from stillness to movement. Once you're in it, the difficulty often fades. But getting started, that's where most people lose. You train your mind by doing, not thinking, not planning, not hoping, doing. And the smaller the gap between idea and action, the stronger your ability becomes. Every time you feel resistance to doing the thing you know matters, and you act anyway, you build a new level of strength. You're no longer working from feelings. You're working from principle. It starts with something simple. Set an alarm. When it goes off, get up immediately. Don't think, don't delay, don't negotiate, just move. That single action may seem small, but it is the foundation. You're showing your brain that what matters is action, not emotion. You're telling yourself that you follow through regardless of mood, and that message changes everything. It applies to everything else. When it's time to work, begin. When it's time to train, go. When it's time to have a difficult conversation, speak. The delay is the problem. It creates room for doubt, distraction, and excuses. You eliminate that space by acting fast and without question. Think about how often you've waited to feel ready. How many times you've said, "I'll start tomorrow," or "I'm not in the right mindset today." That pattern is what keeps you in place. It becomes a cycle, one that convinces you that you need some magical feeling to move forward. But the truth is, the more you wait, the weaker the muscle becomes. It's like any part of the body. Neglect it and it starts to fade. Train it and it becomes strong. You don't need to become fearless. You don't need to eliminate discomfort. You simply need to act. No emotion is required to begin. And the more you prove this to yourself through action, the easier it becomes to override the brain's craving for comfort. When you stop needing motivation, you start gaining momentum. You don't have to push yourself as hard because you're no longer dealing with internal debates. You've set a standard that says, when it's time, I move. That kind of internal discipline simplifies everything. You no longer waste energy deciding if you should do it. You've already decided. The only question now is when, and the answer is always now. It's important to understand that motivation often comes after action, not before. People think they need to feel good to start, but in truth they start, and then they feel good. You don't get energized before going to the gym. You feel the energy rise after the workout. You don't feel confident before doing the hard thing. You feel it once it's done. You stop waiting, you start doing. That's how you train your brain to handle life. That's how you develop grit. That's how you separate yourself from the version of you that keeps making promises and never keeps them. When you prove to yourself that action is possible even without desire, you unlock a level of freedom most people never experience. You don't need more motivation. You need more movement. One push, one rep, one action. That's it. And then the next. This is how habits form. This is how identity changes. You stop being someone who wants to grow, and you become someone who does grow every single day, whether you feel like it or not. Look around. Most people struggle not because they lack talent or opportunity, but because they lack the ability to act without feeling inspired. They rely on energy instead of effort. And the result is a life of waiting, watching and wondering what could have been. But not you. Not if you decide today to take control. You don't have to conquer everything at once. Just the next thing. The smallest next action. Get up when it's hard. Speak up when it's scary. Stay focused when it's boring. Do the thing that builds you even when you don't see instant results. That's the practice. That's the path. This is not about becoming robotic. It's about becoming reliable. It's about creating a life where you can trust yourself to do the hard thing, whether or not it feels good. You want peace? Do the thing you're avoiding. You want confidence? Prove to yourself that you show up no matter what. You want strength? Build it through action, not feelings. There's no secret. There's no shortcut. There's just the discipline of starting, and the only way to build that is to start before you feel ready. Always. That's the rule. That's the code. And it works. You don't have to enjoy discomfort. You just have to walk into it. And on the other side of that discomfort is freedom. Freedom from procrastination. Freedom from regret. Freedom from being controlled by moods and emotions. Because now you're choosing your life, not reacting to it. You become someone who doesn't need ideal conditions. You stop being a slave to how you feel. That's real power. That's what builds lasting change. You're not chasing a spark anymore. You're becoming the fire. Each morning, the opportunity shows up again. You get to decide, do I wait or do I move? The people who change their lives don't wait, they move. No matter how tired, how uncertain, how uninspired they feel, they move because they've trained their minds to do so. They've taught themselves that discipline is stronger than comfort. That choice is more powerful than mood. And every time you do the same, you get closer to who you were meant to be. Not the version that needs to be pushed, but the version that pulls themselves forward because they've chosen to live with purpose, not preference. Start with something small today. One task you've been avoiding. One habit you know you need to build. One thing you keep delaying. Do it. Don't wait. Don't plan. Don't think it through. Just do it. Feel the resistance. Do it anyway. That's how the rewiring begins. Over time, it becomes second nature. The delay disappears. You become someone who moves quickly, acts decisively and grows daily. Your brain learns that the path forward is through action, not comfort. And once it learns that, everything changes. You don't rise to your highest potential by feeling good. You rise by doing what matters when it's hardest. And that begins now. Not tomorrow. Not next week. Now. Because you no longer depend on motivation. You've built something better, discipline, and with that you can do anything. The challenge isn't what you face out there. It's what you allow inside. The lies your brain tells you to protect your comfort zone. Ignore them. Act anyway. That's your power. That's your edge. You are not lazy. You are not weak. You are not broken. You've just been trained by the world to believe that feelings should lead your life. But now you know better. Now you lead your life. With or without motivation. Because you've learned the truth. You don't need to feel ready to move. You just need to move. And everything else will follow. Chapter 2. Push through discomfort by taking one small action. Discomfort is not a sign to stop. It's a sign to start paying attention. It's the feeling that shows up right before growth begins. Most people try to escape it. They avoid anything that feels heavy, awkward, boring, or unfamiliar. They wait until the discomfort goes away before they take action. And because of that, they stay in the same cycle for years, always knowing what they need to do but never doing it. If you want to change your life, you have to stop running from discomfort. You have to meet it, look it in the eye, and move toward it. And the simplest way to do that is by taking one small action, just one. Not the perfect plan, not the complete step-by-step process, just the next move that's right in front of you. It could be something small, almost too small to notice. Answer the email you've been avoiding. Get out of the chair and take a walk. Start the task without worrying about finishing it. One move is all it takes to start shifting your brain out of hesitation and into forward motion. You don't have to feel ready. You don't have to like it. You don't have to know what comes next. You just have to begin. Most of the time, discomfort is not as dangerous as it seems. It's just new. It's just unfamiliar. Your brain is wired to protect you from anything that feels uncertain, even if that thing is good for you. That's why it always offers resistance when you're about to do something meaningful. It doesn't want change. It wants safety. So it creates the feeling of discomfort to slow you down. But discomfort is not a reason to stop. It's proof you're headed in the right direction. Taking one small action works because it breaks the illusion that you're stuck. It tells your mind, I can move, even when it's hard. It interrupts the fear and the noise. When you act, even in the smallest way, you take back control. You stop being a passive observer of your life, and you become someone who directs it. Discomfort will always be part of the process. You will feel uncertain. You will feel resistance. You will feel like giving up. But none of those feelings mean you can't move forward. You just need to stop waiting for those feelings to disappear. You move with them, through them, despite them. This is where most people get it wrong. They think discomfort is a wall, but it's not. It's a signal. It's your mind saying you're on the edge of something important. And that edge is where change begins. You don't need to fight the entire mountain. You just need to take one step. That one step could be the moment that breaks the pattern. And that one step can be repeated tomorrow, and again, the day after. This is how people transform, not by doing everything at once, but by doing one thing consistently, especially when it feels uncomfortable. The truth is, the discomfort doesn't get smaller, but your tolerance for it grows. You get stronger. What once made you hesitate now becomes normal. and what used to scare you becomes your starting point. This is how you expand your limits, by leaning into the things that once made you pause. Action in the face of discomfort teaches you discipline, it teaches you patience, it teaches you how to manage yourself when your emotions are pulling you in every direction. That's a skill most people never develop, because they let discomfort stop them before they even begin. But once you stop seeing discomfort as a stop sign, everything changes. You begin to see it as a teacher. Start noticing the moments when you feel it. That small hesitation before you speak up. That tight feeling in your chest before starting something new. That mental fog that tries to pull you toward distraction. Those are the moments that define who you become. If you act when it's hard, you become stronger. If you avoid it, the discomfort grows and controls you. There is nothing noble about making life easy. The people you admire, the ones who seem disciplined, confident and consistent, they're not immune to discomfort. They've just trained themselves to act anyway. And you can do the same. It starts with one decision. I will not wait for comfort. I will not wait to feel perfect. I will move because I choose growth over ease. Your brain will give you 1,000 reasons to stop. It will whisper that you're not ready, that it's not the right time, that there's something more urgent to do. But you know the truth. The truth is, you're not stuck. You're just scared of feeling uncomfortable. And the only way to shrink that fear is to move while it's still there. That small action might not feel like a breakthrough in the moment, but over time, those small moves become habits. They become your new normal. And that's when your life begins to change in ways you didn't think were possible. Not because everything got easier, but because you became the kind of person who acts no matter how hard it feels. If you keep waiting to feel comfortable, you'll be waiting your whole life. That's the honest truth. You'll always find a reason to delay, always find a feeling that's missing, always find a distraction that feels more urgent. But when you make discomfort your companion instead of your enemy, you move forward in ways most people never do. Every day brings a choice. You can stay where it feels easy, or you can step into the challenge. That choice doesn't need to be big. It just needs to be real. One uncomfortable conversation. One extra push at the gym. One moment of focus when you feel tired. These are not giant leaps. They're small actions, but they are powerful because they add up. You don't need to convince yourself with a long speech. You don't need a pep talk. You just need to move. Stand up. Breathe. Begin. The discomfort will still be there, but you'll notice it changes the moment you start. It doesn't disappear, but it weakens, because action is stronger than fear, always. And the beauty of this approach is that it works in every area of life. In health, in relationships, in work, in building a habit, in fixing something broken. You'll never regret moving forward when you know it's right, but you will regret letting another day slip by because it felt uncomfortable. Life isn't about avoiding the hard things, it's about getting better at doing them. And you get better by practicing, by showing up when it's inconvenient, by taking one small action when your brain screams for comfort, by proving to yourself that discomfort won't destroy you. One moment of discomfort in exchange for progress is always worth it. And the more you choose that path, the more capable you become. You stop fearing the hard parts. You start seeing them as the price of becoming who you want to be. You build a quiet kind of confidence, not loud, not showy, but unshakable, because you've seen what happens when you act through the discomfort. You've seen what it creates. Strength, clarity, momentum, self-respect. And in a world that runs from pain, you become someone who rises through it. That is rare. That is powerful. That is you. If you choose to take one small action today. Chapter 3. Build discipline by showing up every single day. Discipline is not built on talent or motivation. It's built on repetition. The person who shows up every day, no matter how they feel, no matter what the weather is, no matter how tired or busy they are, becomes unstoppable. It's not about how perfectly you perform, it's about the fact that you're there. When you build a life where you show up daily for what matters most, you remove the need for constant decision-making. You stop debating whether or not to try. You just do it. That reliability creates internal strength. It creates trust in yourself, and that trust is what turns ordinary effort into something powerful. Too many people wait for the right mood or the right timing. They wait for their schedule to open up. They tell themselves they'll start again next week or next month. They don't realize that the longer you wait to begin, the heavier the task becomes in your mind. But when you show up every day, it stops being a question. It becomes part of who you are. It's not a thing you do occasionally, it's something you do without skipping. And that changes everything. When you decide to commit to something every single day, it forces you to become honest about what matters. It makes you organize your time. It strips away the excuses. It puts your goals in front of you and says, you either act now or you don't get better. That pressure isn't a burden, it's a gift. Because when you're forced to show up, you realize how much time you've spent avoiding progress in the name of comfort. Showing up daily doesn't mean perfection. It doesn't mean pushing yourself to the limit every time. It means that no matter what, you do something, even if it's small, even if it's quiet, even if it's boring. You do it because discipline grows from showing up, not from occasional bursts of effort. The results may come slowly, but the character it builds in you is immediate. You start becoming the kind of person who can rely on themselves. You stop needing outside validation because your consistency speaks louder than any praise. You will not feel excited every day. You will not always feel productive or clear-minded. That's normal. That's life. But none of that is an excuse to disappear from your commitments. When you base your actions on discipline instead of emotion, you start to rise above circumstances. The weather doesn't matter. Your mood doesn't matter. The outcome doesn't even matter. What matters is that you showed up when most people would have stayed home, quit, or delayed. There's something powerful about being consistent in a world that gives up quickly. It builds a different kind of confidence. Not the kind that's loud or flashy, but the kind that sits quietly in your bones and says, I keep my word. That kind of discipline creates momentum. You don't have to restart every week, because you never stop. You don't need to rebuild what you lost, because you never let it fall apart. And even when life gets chaotic, you have something stable to hold on to, your commitment to keep going. This doesn't happen overnight. It happens one day at a time. You don't need to do it all today. You just need to show up. You do that again tomorrow, and the day after, and the day after that. Over time, it becomes automatic. What used to feel hard becomes part of your rhythm. You start to notice how different you feel. You think clearer. You act quicker. You waste less time. Not because life got easier, but because you became stronger through consistency. Every time you show up, you are reinforcing a message to your brain. You're teaching it that your goals are not negotiable. You're teaching it that effort happens with or without motivation. You're teaching it that your word matters. That kind of training creates a new identity. You're not someone who's trying. You're someone who does. That's the difference between short-term change and lifelong growth. There will be days when you want to quit. days when the results feel invisible, days when progress feels slow. That's when the habit of showing up matters the most. Because in those moments, you are not driven by reward, you're driven by principle. You're there because you said you would be. That's the kind of person who eventually reaches every goal they set. The daily habit is not just about the outcome. It's about what you're building inside. You're building control over your impulses. You're learning how to follow through on promises. You're becoming someone who doesn't break under pressure. That internal strength will outlast any external success. You don't need more time. You need more consistency. One focused hour every day is more powerful than 7 scattered hours once a week. One daily decision to follow through creates more change than 100 empty intentions. When you show up regularly, you stop negotiating with yourself. You don't wait to see if today is a good day. You decide it is because you're already there doing the work. If you only act on the days you feel like it, you'll never move past your limits. The growth is in the repetition. It's in the discomfort of showing up tired, stressed, bored, or distracted, and doing it anyway. You're not just building skills, you're building mental resilience. You're learning how to carry on when life doesn't cooperate. It's easy to admire discipline in others, but you only build it by living it. And it always starts small. Wake up on time. Stick to your routine. Do the work without shortcuts. Don't make excuses. Don't let one missed day turn into 2. You are always just one decision away from being back on track. You don't need a restart. You just need to return. Some days you'll move fast. Some days you'll crawl, but as long as you're still in the game, you're not losing. Showing up every day is not about achieving perfection. It's about refusing to disappear. It's about standing your ground. It's about holding the line when everything around you wants you to quit. The difference between people who succeed and those who don't often comes down to one thing: consistency. Not talent, not luck, not background, just the ability to keep going when it's hard. And the best part is, this is something anyone can build. It doesn't require anything special, just the willingness to keep showing up when no one is watching. You don't need to wait for a new month or a new year. You just need to decide that today matters, and once you do that, every day becomes another opportunity to get better. Not because it's easy, but because it's worth it. And you're worth it. You don't have to feel unstoppable to be disciplined. You just have to show up, quietly, relentlessly, daily. That's how strength is built. That's how discipline is formed. And that's how transformation becomes permanent. Not all at once, but every single day. Chapter 4. Break big goals into simple daily steps. Big goals often look exciting at first, but very quickly they become overwhelming. People feel inspired by the idea of change, but when they look at the size of what needs to be done, they freeze. The distance between where they are and where they want to be feels too wide, so they stall, they overthink. They plan without acting. And slowly, the dream that once lit them up begins to fade. But it doesn't have to be this way. Any big goal, no matter how massive it seems, can be broken down into something manageable, and once that happens, it becomes possible, not just someday, but today. You don't need to conquer the entire mountain in one day. You just need to take a step. That sounds simple, but it's often the one thing people avoid. They get caught in the fantasy of the final result and forget that all progress is built on tiny, repeated actions. The person who moves slowly every day ends up further than the one who rushes once and burns out. If you can break your big goal into small, repeatable steps, you no longer fear the size of the journey. You focus only on what's in front of you. That's how you move without panic, That's how you stay consistent without exhaustion. The brain is more likely to cooperate with you when the task feels small. It resists what feels too big or unclear. So instead of saying, I want to write a book, say, I will write 1 page today. Instead of saying, I need to lose weight, say, I will walk for 20 minutes right now. When the target is specific and doable, your brain doesn't hesitate as much. You lower the pressure, you make it realistic. And once you act, momentum builds naturally. Every goal is built in pieces. If you want to make progress, you must stop thinking like a dreamer and start thinking like a builder. A builder doesn't stare at the empty land and wish the house would appear. They lay 1 brick, then another, then another. They don't rush, they don't quit, they follow a process. And at the end of that process is the finished structure. Not because of one massive push, but because of consistent action brick by brick. You can apply this to anything. If you want to master a skill, don't try to learn everything at once. Learn 1 small piece today. If you want to launch a project, don't try to finish it all in a weekend. Start with 1 task. If you want to change your life, don't expect to feel different tomorrow. Change 1 routine, 1 decision, 1 action. That's how real transformation happens, slowly, patiently, and daily. This approach also protects your energy. Trying to do too much at once leads to burnout. You get exhausted, discouraged, and often quit. But when you break things down into small tasks, you preserve your focus. You stay fresh. You get small wins that reinforce progress, and those wins matter. They create belief. They give you proof that you're moving, even if the end result still feels far away. People often underestimate the power of daily effort because the changes don't look dramatic. But that's the point. The change is in who you're becoming, not just what you're achieving. Every time you take a step, no matter how small, you are shaping your identity. You are becoming someone who follows through. Someone who doesn't run from big goals, but breaks them down and handles them piece by piece. This mindset requires clarity. You can't break down what you haven't defined, so if your goal is vague, start by getting clear. Don't just say you want to be successful. Define what success looks like. Write it down. Give it a name. Then look at that vision and ask yourself, what is 1 thing I could do today to move toward this? That question is the bridge between dreaming and doing. Not everything needs to be figured out right away. You don't need the entire map before you move. You just need a direction. 1 task, 1 habit, 1 adjustment. The rest will become clear as you go. Action brings clarity. Movement reveals the next step. Waiting for full certainty leads to delay. Doing something simple every day builds confidence, which helps you keep going even when the path ahead is not fully visible. Breaking goals into daily steps also teaches patience. You learn to appreciate progress instead of chasing perfection. You begin to value effort over speed. You stop measuring success by how far you are from the finish line and start measuring it by how consistent you've been today. That shift matters. It changes how you feel about the process. It removes the stress of trying to do everything right away. It gives you space to grow, learn, and adjust. Some days, your step will feel effortless. Other days, it will feel heavy. But either way, you move. Because the goal is not to feel amazing all the time. The goal is to build something that lasts, and that only happens when you stop letting emotions decide your pace and let structure lead the way. Your system becomes stronger than your excuses. Your process becomes more important than your mood. That's when you know discipline is taking root. One of the most powerful benefits of breaking things down is that it makes the impossible feel practical. What once looked too far suddenly feels reachable. Not because the distance changed, but because your approach did. You no longer try to leap across the whole field. You just take the step you can manage right now, and you repeat that every day. That repetition creates mastery. It creates resilience. It builds a foundation you can trust, no matter how difficult the goal is. You also start to notice that the small daily steps begin to influence other parts of your life. The focus you bring to one area starts to spread. You become more intentional with your time. You manage distractions better. You value consistency more. And slowly your life begins to align with your vision, not through a dramatic breakthrough, but through steady daily effort. It doesn't matter how busy you are. Everyone has 10 or 15 minutes to give to something that matters. Use that time wisely. Choose your step the night before. Prepare your space. Eliminate distractions. Then when the time comes, act. Don't wait for the perfect time. Don't check your mood. Just begin. Those few minutes, stacked every day, create results you won't believe until you see them. If you want to change your life, stop thinking about the finish line. Think about the next move. Think about what you can do today that pushes you slightly forward. That's where real power lives, in the ability to act now without needing to see the entire picture. Big goals are only scary when you try to face them all at once, but when you divide them into pieces, they become part of your daily rhythm. Keep your steps simple. Keep them clear. Don't chase variety. Chase consistency. The brain doesn't need a new strategy every week. It needs repetition. It needs structure. It needs to know what to expect. That's how habits form. That's how progress sticks. Whatever you want to achieve, begin breaking it down. Write the vision. Identify the main blocks. Turn each block into tasks. Spread those tasks across your calendar. Treat them like appointments. Show up for them like you would for anything important. That structure will carry you when motivation runs low. And when you look back, you'll realize the goal wasn't reached in a moment. It was built step by step by someone who refused to give up. Chapter 5. Face fear by choosing action over overthinking. Fear grows in silence. It thrives in the space between thought and action. The more time you give it, the more control it takes. And that's the trap many people fall into. They wait until they feel ready. They wait until they're not scared anymore. They wait for the perfect moment, but that moment never comes, because fear doesn't vanish on its own. It fades only when you do the thing you're afraid of. Thinking more doesn't shrink fear. Action does. When you overthink, you create versions of the future that don't even exist. You play out worst-case scenarios that aren't happening. You try to solve problems that haven't arrived. You carry the weight of events that might never occur, and in doing so, you exhaust yourself. You drain your energy before you even take a step. What could have been handled with a simple action now feels like a monster living in your mind. But the monster isn't real. It only looks big because you've been feeding it with delay. Every person feels fear. There's nothing weak or unusual about that. But how you respond to fear, that's where strength is measured. Do you freeze and let the fear build a wall? Or do you lean in and break it apart by doing something? Most people get stuck not because they lack talent, but because they wait for fear to disappear. It won't. Fear is part of growth. It means you're stretching beyond what's comfortable, and that's a good sign. It's not a signal to stop. It's a signal to start moving. There's a part of you that already knows what to do. You've replayed it 100 times in your head. You've thought about the email, the call, the conversation, the application, the step forward. But the longer you sit on it, the heavier it gets. It begins to feel like a risk when really it's just resistance. You're not facing a disaster, you're facing discomfort, and discomfort is temporary. But regret lasts longer. The regret of staying stuck, of holding back, of letting another day pass without progress. Those are the things that truly hurt over time. You can't think your way into courage. You have to act. That action doesn't need to be dramatic. It can be small. A message sent, a task started, a word spoken, a choice made. What matters is that you disrupt the fear with movement, because once you do, the brain shifts. You go from imagining to experiencing. You go from mental paralysis to physical engagement, and the moment you're engaged, fear loses some of its power. Most people fear outcomes they can't control, but what you can always control is what you do right now. You can't decide how others will respond. You can't guarantee a result, but you can choose to take the next honest step. That choice is your freedom. You don't need to feel brave to act. You just need to act and let bravery catch up. The more you move, the more your mind adapts. It starts to see the fear for what it is, a signal, not a stop sign. Action creates evidence. Evidence that you can handle more than you thought. Evidence that progress is possible. Evidence that fear isn't a force, it's a feeling. Feelings shift. They change. But evidence stays. You begin to build a track record of doing hard things. That's how confidence is formed, not through affirmations or perfect plans, but through real steps taken in spite of discomfort. The mistake many people make is waiting for confidence before they act. But confidence comes from doing the thing you're avoiding. If you want to be confident speaking, speak. If you want to be confident in your work, do your work. If you want to feel strong in your choices, make a choice. Confidence isn't a prerequisite, it's a result. You don't get to skip the fear, you walk through it. You earn the clarity, you earn the strength. Fear is loud, but it's not accurate. It tells you everything that could go wrong but never counts. What could go right? It exaggerates. It twists your thinking. It makes simple steps feel complicated. And if you let it, it will shape your whole life. It will guide your decisions. It will define your limits. It will keep you in the same patterns, repeating the same day, wishing for change but never claiming it. You can't let that happen. You have to interrupt the loop. One way to do that is to reduce the time between thought and action. The longer you wait, the harder it gets. So train yourself to shorten that gap. Feel the fear, recognize it, then move anyway. Take one step before the fear talks you out of it. That habit alone can transform your path. You stop becoming someone who waits and start becoming someone who leads their own life, even with fear sitting in the background. This doesn't mean you have to rush into danger. It means you stop building stories around the fear. You stop letting your thoughts spiral. You come back to the present moment. You ground yourself in what you can control. You decide to do something small but meaningful. That might be speaking your truth. It might be standing up for yourself. It might be trying something new. Whatever it is, the act of doing breaks the illusion that fear is bigger than you. Courage is not the absence of fear, it's the refusal to be ruled by it. People who achieve things don't lack fear. They just refuse to give it the final vote. They feel it, acknowledge it, and act anyway, and every time they do, they become less controlled by it. That's how growth works. It's not clean, it's not comfortable, but it's always worth it. You'll never fully eliminate fear from your life, and you don't need to. It's a sign you care. It means something matters. What you must do is change your relationship with it. Stop trying to negotiate with it. Stop asking it for permission. You don't need fear's approval to live boldly. You need your own decision. You need to say, "I know this scares me, but I will move anyway." You'll be amazed how quickly fear loses its edge once you act. What felt impossible becomes manageable. What felt heavy becomes lighter. You start seeing results. You start creating momentum, and that momentum builds into something powerful, a life that moves forward, even when it doesn't feel perfect. A life built not on what-ifs, but on choices made with intention. Overthinking is a habit, and like any habit, it can be replaced. Replace it with doing. Not reckless doing, but conscious, committed doing. The kind that says, "This matters enough to try, even if I don't have every answer." That kind of mindset puts you in motion, and once you're in motion, you can adjust, you can learn, you can grow. But none of that happens if you stay in your head. Fear is only strong when you're standing still. Start walking. You'll feel it shake. You'll hear it shout. But if you keep moving, it gets quieter, because it knows it can't stop someone who refuses to stop. Let that be you. Not fearless, but free. Not perfect, but in progress. Always moving. Always choosing the next step, even when fear is watching. Chapter 6. Strengthened willpower by doing what you avoid most. The things you avoid carry the exact weight you need to grow stronger. You already know what you've been pushing aside. It's not hidden, it's right there, quietly waiting for you to stop running from it. And that's the truth most people don't want to face. Your strength doesn't come from doing more of what you're comfortable with. It comes from turning toward what you resist. That's where willpower is built. Not in theory, not in talk, but in the tension you keep trying to escape. There's always something you keep on your list, but never get around to. You touch it mentally and quickly pull back. You tell yourself you'll handle it later, when the timing is better, when you're more prepared, when the mood is right, but that later becomes months, and the resistance becomes bigger than the task itself. You waste more energy avoiding it than it would take to simply deal with it, and the more you delay, the more powerless you feel. Willpower doesn't appear out of nowhere. It's something you create by facing friction and choosing to act anyway. It doesn't grow when life is easy. It sharpens when you choose discomfort on purpose. When you pick the thing you don't want to do and you do it with full attention, even when everything inside you wants to quit. That decision right there, again and again, is how you build inner control. And once you have that, you stop being pushed around by moods, excuses, or doubt. Avoidance always starts small. You tell yourself it's not urgent. You say you'll deal with it after you finish easier things. You create a whole list of distractions that feel productive, but don't move your life forward. And over time, that habit of avoiding the hard things starts to shape your identity. You begin to see yourself as someone who can't stick with things, who always struggles to finish, who gives in when things get tough. But that's not who you are. It's just what you've practiced. If you want to change how you see yourself, change what you choose to face. Go directly to the thing you're least motivated to do. That one task, that hard conversation, that overdue decision. Start there. Not because it's fun, not because you feel like it, but because it's the quickest way to reclaim your power. Each time you do that, you rewire your mind. You stop needing external motivation. You start trusting yourself. Most people try to rely on willpower when they feel drained. That's why they fail. Willpower is not some switch you flip when everything is falling apart. It's a muscle you build daily by leaning into the uncomfortable when you don't have to. You do hard things not because you're forced, but because you choose to. That choice builds a reserve. Then when you're tired, when you're stressed, when everything feels like too much, you'll have the strength to keep going, not because you feel like it, but because it's who you've become. We all have areas we avoid because they trigger feelings we don't want to face. Shame, guilt, fear of failure. But those feelings don't go away when you ignore them. They grow. They start affecting your focus, your mood, your sleep, and you begin to carry around the weight of everything left undone. The only way to stop that cycle is to take the thing you least want to do and start doing it, little by little. You don't need to finish everything at once. You just need to stop running. Start with a small chunk. Set a timer for 15 minutes. Give your full focus to what you've been dodging. No distractions, no multitasking, no excuses, just you and the thing you've avoided. That simple act will do more for your confidence than any motivational video, because it proves that you are not at the mercy of your feelings. You are not a victim of delay. You are capable of discipline, and you show it every time you do the opposite of what your mind tries to avoid. Discipline isn't about perfection. It's about doing what needs to be done, even if it's messy, even if it's uncomfortable. It's the act of keeping promises to yourself when no one is watching. That's where real strength is found, not in what people praise you for, but in the battles no one sees. The early mornings, the silent decisions, the quiet effort, that's what builds a life you can be proud of. It's tempting to look for shortcuts, to think there's a secret to discipline or some hack to make willpower easy. But the truth is simple. You become disciplined by doing hard things on purpose, especially the ones you want to avoid. That's it. No trick, no hack, just consistent, intentional choices, day after day. Not always big ones. Sometimes it's just waking up on time, showing up to the gym, eating the meal you planned, finishing the task you opened. These small choices add up, and over time, they create something unshakable. You don't need to fix everything at once. Just focus on the one thing that has been hanging over your head the longest. Pick that one. That's where the greatest growth is hiding. You've already thought about it 100 times. You've already wasted hours thinking around it. Now give it 10 minutes of direct action. That's how you cut through mental clutter. You stop thinking and start moving. Each time you face what you avoid, you chip away at the illusion that it's too much for you. You realize it's never as bad as it felt in your head. You understand that the real problem wasn't the task, it was the fear around the task. And by acting, you break the cycle. You stop feeding the fear, you take your power back. That kind of self-trust becomes your foundation. It's what makes you consistent. It's what helps you stay grounded when life gets chaotic. There's no substitute for the feeling of doing something you once avoided. It rewires how you see yourself. You start to respect your own choices. You build momentum. You begin to expect more from yourself. Not in a punishing way, but in a way that says, I know I can do hard things because I've done them before. That belief becomes your baseline. And when that's your baseline, very little can shake you. The version of you who faces discomfort, who moves toward the hard things, who follows through, that version is always inside you. It's not about becoming someone else. It's about removing the habits that have held you back. And the fastest way to do that is to stop running from what you fear and start walking toward it. Slowly, surely, one task at a time. You don't need motivation. You need to interrupt the loop of avoidance. That's where everything begins to shift. And the best news? You can start right now. No waiting. No planning. Just choose the one thing you've been putting off and take action. That's how willpower is built. Not in comfort, but in the quiet choice to do what you've avoided the most. That's your turning point. That's your strength. You can't go deep if you're constantly being pulled in every direction. Focus isn't just about forcing yourself to concentrate. It's about clearing the space that allows your mind to settle. Most people never reach real depth because they don't protect their attention. They leave the door wide open. Notifications come in. Messages demand replies. Noise creeps in from every device. And before they know it, they're reacting to everything and finishing nothing. If your attention is scattered, your results will always be shallow. There's a cost to being available all the time. You don't notice it at first. It seems harmless to glance at your phone. It feels natural to bounce from tab to tab. You tell yourself you're staying connected, staying in the loop, but over time, your brain becomes conditioned to short bursts, to constant shifts. You lose your tolerance for stillness. You start craving quick hits of stimulation instead of meaningful progress, and before long, you forget what it feels like to be fully locked in. Start by identifying what distracts you the most. Be honest. Is it your phone? Is it email? Is it background noise? Once you're aware of what breaks your focus, remove it completely before you begin any task that matters. Don't try to resist it while it's still within reach. That only drains more energy. Move it. Shut it off. Silence it. Whatever it takes. The fewer temptations you face in the moment, the easier it becomes to stay immersed. Multitasking is the biggest lie you've been sold. It doesn't make you more productive. It just splits your attention. And split attention leads to shallow thinking. When you jump between tasks, your mind has to reset each time. That reset costs you time, mental clarity and depth. You end up busy, but not effective, active but not focused, and you wonder why things take longer than they should. If you want to think clearly and work deeply, you need boundaries. Decide when you're available and when you're not. Create pockets of uninterrupted time. Let others know when you're off limits. You don't need to be reachable every second. You don't need to respond immediately to everything. The world won't end if you take time to focus. And in fact, your value increases when you deliver higher quality work, something only possible when your attention is undivided. There's power in turning things off. Try it for an hour. No background noise, no scrolling, no interruptions, just you and the task. At first, it might feel uncomfortable. Your brain will itch for distraction. You'll feel the urge to check, to switch, to escape, but stay with it. Let that discomfort pass. On the other side of it is a state of focus most people never reach. It's where creativity flows freely. It's where complex problems get solved. It's where momentum is built. Every time you allow a small distraction, you train your mind to expect it. That habit adds up. Your focus weakens, your tolerance for silence shrinks. But the opposite is also true. Every time you resist a distraction, you strengthen your focus. You make it easier to stay locked in. You build a habit of deep thinking. And that habit becomes a skill that sets you apart. Most people live in a constant state of mild distraction. They check their phones dozens of times a day. They leave tabs open, just in case. They listen to things while trying to think clearly, and then they wonder why they feel mentally drained and emotionally scattered. If that's your default, focus will always feel like a struggle. You have to break that pattern. You have to build a new baseline, one where your attention is protected by design, not just willpower. Focus is not about doing more, it's about doing fewer things better. It's about being fully present with the one task that matters most right now. You don't need a complicated system to get there. You just need to make space, clear the noise, block time, set boundaries, and then give yourself permission to go deep. Don't wait until conditions are perfect. Don't wait until you feel ready. Create focus with what you have. Start with small chunks of time. Prove to yourself that you can stay with one thing longer than your habits want you to. As that skill builds, expand the time. Stretch your limits. You'll notice a shift. Not just in your work, but in your thinking. Your mind becomes sharper. Your ideas come quicker. You move with clarity instead of confusion. The deeper you go, the more you accomplish, and not just more tasks, but more meaningful results. You create things that last. You solve problems that once overwhelmed you. You finish what you start. That's what happens when you stop reacting and start creating space for deep, uninterrupted work. It's not about being rigid or robotic. It's about being deliberate, about choosing your input so you can control your output. When you spend your time reacting to every ping, every alert, every piece of noise, you lose control of your day. But when you decide to remove those distractions, you take that control back. You stop being pulled. You start driving. This is how you train yourself to focus in a world that wants your attention every second. You make it harder for distractions to reach you. You design your environment around your goals, not your impulses. And you stop treating your attention like it's disposable, because it's not. It's one of your most valuable resources. Protect it like it matters, because it does. No one's going to do this for you. The world will not protect your focus. That's your job. You decide what gets through and what gets shut out. You choose whether today is consumed by interruptions or defined by progress. That choice is yours. Every single day. Chapter 8. Commit fully by deciding with no turning back. The moment you fully commit, everything begins to change. When there's no backup plan, no exit route, and no second guessing, your focus sharpens. Your energy stops leaking in different directions. You stop asking whether it will work and start making it work. But most people never get to that level. They keep one foot out the door. They leave themselves space to quit. And because of that, they never find out what they're really capable of. You can't move powerfully while hesitating. Half decisions lead to half effort. You say you want it, but deep down you've already left room to retreat. That silent doubt in the back of your mind, if this doesn't work, I can always go back, is the very thing that weakens your progress. You can't build strength with shaky ground under you. You can't grow if you keep entertaining the idea of giving up. There comes a time when you have to make a real decision. One that isn't based on how you feel in the moment. One that doesn't shift depending on what's easy or convenient. A decision that locks you in. That's when growth begins. Not when everything is certain, but when you say, I'm doing this no matter what, and then follow through without flinching. People think commitment is about being sure. It's not. It's about being willing. Willing to face what comes. Willing to keep showing up, even when it gets hard. Willing to find a way when the original plan falls apart. You don't need to know how everything will play out. You just need to stop entertaining the option of giving up. That's when your effort becomes clean. That's when your mind stops negotiating with excuses. The reason most goals fail isn't lack of knowledge, it's lack of finality in the decision. You say you're going to do it, but then you leave space for maybe, and that space grows. You tell yourself you're tired, you're not ready. Something came up. You justify taking it slow. You tell yourself it's smart to be cautious. But underneath it all, you just never decided all the way. You never removed the option of quitting. You don't need a perfect plan. You need a strong decision, and a strong decision means no turning back. You close the other doors. You stop checking for easier paths. You burn the bridge to indecision so that going forward is the only thing left. That's when you tap into strength you didn't know you had. Because now you're not splitting your energy between should I do this and how do I make this work. You're all in. It's uncomfortable at first. When you shut off the option to retreat, your mind might panic. You'll feel exposed, vulnerable. But that discomfort is where the breakthrough starts. That's the edge where you get tested. That's where your old habits scream the loudest and your new path demands more of you than ever before. And if you stay with it, if you keep choosing forward every single day, you become someone who no longer asks what if I fail, but what can I become if I keep going. Real commitment doesn't come from hype, it comes from clarity. You have to know why you're doing this. Not some surface reason that sounds good to other people, but something that lives deep inside you. Something that you're tired of avoiding, something that matters more than comfort, more than approval, more than fear. When your reason is strong, your decision becomes firm. You might be tempted to wait until you feel more confident, until you're ready. But that's just fear dressed up as logic. Readiness doesn't come before the decision. It comes after. Confidence grows in action. Belief grows when you keep choosing not to quit. The sooner you make the real decision, the sooner your energy stops being wasted on indecision and starts fueling results. It doesn't mean everything will go smoothly. In fact, once you commit, life will test you harder. You'll face resistance, setbacks, and doubt. But those aren't signs you're on the wrong path. They're proof that you're finally moving forward. Growth never feels safe in the beginning, but the longer you stay the course, the more natural it becomes to keep showing up. The difficulty doesn't go away, but your strength to handle it grows. The difference between those who make it and those who don't isn't talent or luck. It's the level of their decision. Most people are kind of in, kind of out. They work when it's easy and disappear when it's not. But the ones who win are the ones who remove quitting as an option. They might rest, but they never retreat. They might adjust, but they never abandon. And because of that, they go further than those who keep pausing and restarting. Commitment changes how you move. You stop looking for permission. You stop needing constant motivation. You stop trying to convince yourself daily that you're doing the right thing. You just get to work. You trust the process even when results are slow. You stop overthinking every step. You take the next one with full presence, and then the next, and the next. That rhythm compounds into progress, and eventually into breakthroughs. It doesn't matter how many times you've paused before. What matters is the decision you make now. The real one. The one where you stop waiting, stop doubting, stop giving yourself easy outs. Decide with finality, and then build a life around that decision. Build habits that support it. Build routines that reinforce it. Build boundaries that protect it. When you're truly committed, the hard days don't scare you, because you've already chosen. You've already accepted that difficulty is part of the path. You don't need things to be easy. You just need them to be worth it. And when you've made a deep decision, even the struggle feels purposeful. You're not lost. You're not drifting. You're moving with direction. This is your power, not the moment of inspiration, but the moment you say, "This is it. I'm doing this, and I'm not turning back." That one moment, when taken seriously, reshapes everything. It puts you in control. It gives you momentum. It aligns your actions with your priorities. And it frees you from the constant back and forth that drains your willpower. Decide like your future depends on it, because it does. What you become starts with what you choose right now. Don't wait until you feel ready. Don't keep playing with the idea. Choose. and then give yourself no option but to follow through. That's how you build something unshakable. That's how you reach places you never thought you could. That's how you become someone you can be proud of. Not by trying, by deciding completely, without turning back. Chapter 9. Control your thoughts by choosing what you believe. Everything you allow yourself to believe shapes how you think, what you feel, and how you live. Your beliefs sit quietly behind your actions, yet they determine almost everything you do. If you keep believing that you're not capable, your mind will look for reasons to prove it. If you believe life is against you, your focus will search for evidence of that too. But none of that is fixed. The power you have is the ability to choose what you believe, and through that choice, you control the direction of your thoughts. No one is born with beliefs. They're formed over time, picked up from parents, teachers, friends, media, failure, success, and the opinions of others. Some are useful, some are destructive, but most people never question them. They just assume that whatever they think must be true. They never stop to ask, where did this belief come from? Or, is this helping me or holding me back? That's why so many people stay stuck, not because they're lazy or untalented, but because they've built their entire life around beliefs they didn't choose. You might not control every thought that enters your mind, but you absolutely control what stays. You control what gets reinforced. You control what gets repeated and turned into truth. Just because a thought shows up doesn't mean it deserves your attention. You can let it pass. You can choose a better one. You can train your mind to stop giving energy to stories that pull you down. The mind becomes what you feed it. If you keep focusing on your past failures, your thoughts will be filled with doubt. If you keep surrounding yourself with negativity, your beliefs will follow that tone. But if you start telling yourself a new truth, something better begins to grow. If you begin believing that you can improve, your actions shift. If you believe effort makes a difference, your motivation grows. And when your beliefs support your goals, everything becomes more possible. It doesn't happen all at once. You can't change every belief in a single day, but you can start with one. You can look at a thought that's been limiting you and decide not to accept it anymore. You can say, I don't have to believe that. That's all it takes to begin. And if you keep doing that, if you keep challenging the old voices, replacing them with stronger, healthier beliefs, you reshape how you experience everything. The way you talk to yourself matters more than you realize. Most of the time, your thoughts aren't facts. They're habits. They're patterns you've repeated so many times that you stopped noticing. Maybe someone once told you that you weren't smart enough, and now your mind repeats it without question. Maybe you failed years ago and started believing success isn't for you. But none of that is permanent. You have the right to rewrite what you believe, starting today. Your thoughts will try to go back to the old path. That's what they know. Your brain always favors what's familiar, even if it's harmful. That's why growth is uncomfortable. It requires you to stop feeding the old patterns and begin feeding the new ones. You might not feel like it's working at first. The old thoughts will still show up. But if you don't give them your belief, they lose their power. Over time, they get quieter, and the new beliefs grow stronger. You don't need to wait for proof to believe something better. Belief often comes before evidence. If you want to build confidence, you can't wait to feel confident. You have to start by believing you can develop it. If you want peace of mind, you have to stop believing that you're powerless to your emotions. If you want a better future, you have to stop believing that the past will keep repeating itself. Choosing your beliefs is an act of strength. It means refusing to let the loudest thoughts control your day. It means telling yourself, This might not feel easy right now, but I choose to believe I can handle it. That choice brings focus. It brings steadiness. It gives you something to stand on when doubt tries to pull you down. And if you keep choosing that belief, it becomes your new default. Start listening to how you talk to yourself. Notice what beliefs are running your life. Do they serve you, or do they limit you? Are they helping you move forward, or keeping you stuck in old versions of yourself? This isn't about pretending things are perfect. It's about refusing to keep repeating beliefs that never helped you grow. Every time you choose a better thought, you build mental strength. You build clarity. You take back control from the parts of your mind that were shaped by fear, failure, or the opinions of others. You start deciding who you are, not based on your past, but based on who you're becoming. This shift isn't dramatic. It's subtle. It happens in quiet moments. When you wake up and choose to believe that today can be different. When you face a challenge and remind yourself that you've handled worse. When you feel lost, but still choose to believe you can find your way. These moments of belief are small, but they add up. They build momentum. They shift your self-image, and eventually they create a life that looks completely different from the one shaped by self-doubt. You'll still have negative thoughts. That's part of being human. But now, instead of believing everything you think, you'll start filtering. You'll decide what gets in. You'll stop letting fear be the loudest voice in the room. You'll choose thoughts that guide you instead of thoughts that trap you. And that choice, repeated over time, changes your entire reality. What you believe creates your limits or breaks them. You can believe you're stuck, or you can believe there's another way. You can believe it's too late, or you can believe that the next step matters more than any moment you've missed. You can believe that life is against you, or you can believe that everything you've gone through has prepared you for this point. One belief pulls you backward, the other pulls you forward, and the direction of your life follows whichever one you choose. You're not a prisoner of your mind. You're the one who decides what thoughts get your attention. You're the one who decides what story you live by. If that story is filled with limitation, you can choose to change it. If it's built on old wounds, you can start building a new foundation. The mind is powerful, but only when you guide it. Otherwise, it just runs on autopilot, fueled by fear, comparison, and the noise of the world. Now is the time to become more intentional. Don't wait for confidence. Don't wait for everything to feel clear. Start by choosing what to believe today. Choose thoughts that strengthen you. Choose beliefs that keep you steady. Choose the mindset that moves you forward. That is how you gain control over your life. By first gaining control over your mind, one belief at a time. Chapter 10. Rewire habits by repeating what feels hard daily. Every habit you want to break and every habit you want to build comes down to one thing: what you're willing to repeat, even when it's uncomfortable. There's no shortcut around that truth. You can read about motivation, watch videos about discipline, even plan every detail of your morning routine, but nothing changes until you face the friction and keep going. The change happens through the repetition of what feels unnatural, tiring, and unfamiliar. That's how your brain gets rewired, by doing what's difficult until it becomes automatic. In the beginning, anything new feels awkward. That's normal. You're interrupting a pattern your brain has practiced for years. If you've always avoided hard conversations, taking the step to speak up will feel forced. If you're used to procrastinating, sitting down to work without distraction will feel like a struggle. But that's the space where transformation lives. Right there in the stretch between your old reflex and your new response. Most people never stay long enough in that space. The discomfort pushes them back into what's easy. But the people who grow are the ones who stay. They don't wait to feel ready. They show up anyway. Discipline is not about being in the mood. It's about making a decision and honoring it repeatedly. When something feels hard, your brain sees it as a threat. It wants you to stop and return to comfort. But your future doesn't live in your comfort zone. It lives in the hard moments you don't escape from. Each time you repeat the action, whether it's saying no to an unhealthy choice, getting up early, finishing what you started, you teach your brain that this new path is safe, and the more you repeat it, the less resistance you face. It's easy to get excited about change when motivation is high. The real challenge is staying consistent when you're tired, bored, or discouraged. That's where most people fall off. They assume that if something feels hard, they must be doing it wrong. But the truth is the opposite. If it feels hard, it means you're stretching. That means you're doing it right. That's the work of rewiring, staying present through the resistance, and choosing not to quit when it would be easier to stop. Habits are built through action, not emotion. You don't need to feel inspired to take a step forward. You just need to take it. The feeling often comes after the action. Confidence grows after you show up, not before. Clarity comes from doing, not from overthinking. If you wait for it to feel easy, you'll never move. If you want the change to last, it must be anchored in consistency, not mood. Every day you repeat the hard thing, it gets slightly easier. Not because the task changes, but because you change. You build tolerance. You build rhythm. You start associating effort with progress rather than pain. And over time, the very thing that once felt impossible becomes your new baseline. That's how habits work. They turn effort into identity. At first, you have to remind yourself who you want to become. Eventually, it becomes how you see yourself. This is where you need to be honest with yourself. Not everything that's hard is worth repeating. You need to choose habits that support your growth. The hard things that build you, not the ones that drain you. Don't confuse suffering with discipline. You're not here to grind yourself into the ground. You're here to become more capable, more focused, and more aligned with your goals. Pick the actions that challenge you in the right direction. The ones that stretch your mind, strengthen your discipline, and sharpen your focus. Don't expect dramatic results after a few days. Habits are not formed by intensity. They're formed by stability. Repeating something once doesn't rewire anything. It's what you do again and again that rewrites your patterns. This is why small, consistent action beats short bursts of perfection every time. You don't need to be extreme. You just need to be steady. Build the habit of showing up, even on bad days. Especially on bad days. That's how you train your brain to keep going when it matters most. There will be days when you slip. That doesn't mean you failed. It means you're human. What matters is what you do next. Do you stop altogether, or do you pick yourself back up and repeat the action again tomorrow? That choice decides whether the habit fades or takes root. The repetition isn't about perfection, it's about momentum. Each day you show up. You build that momentum, and when it's strong enough, it starts to carry you forward. Think about what you do each day that feels hard but matters. Maybe it's the moment you sit down to focus. Maybe it's turning off distractions. Maybe it's taking care of your health when your energy is low. Whatever it is, that moment is your training ground. That's where the rewiring happens. The repetition doesn't just build habits, it builds character. It creates a mindset that doesn't back down. It teaches you to stay with something even when it isn't comfortable. People often talk about talent, intelligence, or luck, but in reality, the biggest difference comes from what people repeat daily. The ones who succeed aren't the ones with the easiest path. They're the ones who stayed with the process when others stopped. They kept doing what felt hard until it didn't feel so hard anymore. That's not magic. That's habit. And it's something you can build. Starting today, ask yourself, what's worth repeating in your life? What action, if you did it daily, would move you closer to who you want to be? What discomfort have you been avoiding, even though you know it matters? That's your edge. That's your opportunity. Don't wait for a better time. Don't wait until it feels less inconvenient. Start with the version of yourself you have right now and take one hard step. Then take it again tomorrow. You don't need massive change. You need consistent pressure in the right direction. One repeated step is more powerful than one big leap, followed by inaction. If you can just stay with the hard thing a little longer each day, you'll surprise yourself. You'll build a level of discipline that doesn't fade when things get difficult. You'll start to see your progress not just in outcomes, but in the strength you've developed. There's freedom on the other side of repetition. Freedom from the habits that used to hold you back. Freedom from the doubt that used to stop you. But you only reach it by doing the work. Not just once. Not just when you feel like it. But over and over, until what was hard becomes part of who you are. That's how change becomes permanent. That's how habits are rewired, through the quiet, steady act of repeating what feels hard daily, deliberately, and without excuses. Chapter 11. Make failure part of your growth, not your identity. Failure is part of becoming better at anything, but it's not what defines who you are. The biggest mistake most people make is confusing a result with their identity. Just because something didn't work out doesn't mean you are broken, incapable, or behind. It means you were in the process of figuring something out, and figuring something out always comes with setbacks. Everyone who has achieved anything worthwhile has failed more than once. What sets them apart isn't that they avoided failure, it's that they didn't let it become how they saw themselves. When you try something and fall short, the experience can feel personal. It can feel like proof that maybe you're not cut out for this, that maybe this dream isn't yours to chase. But that voice in your head isn't speaking the truth. It's speaking fear, and if you let that voice grow, it will shrink everything in your life. Not just your goals, but your confidence, your curiosity, your willingness to take risks again. You stop reaching, not because you can't, but because you've started to believe the failure means something it never actually did. You can't avoid failure if you're truly growing. The more you stretch, the more you'll fall. That's not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of movement. People who don't fail are either not trying or only doing what they already know they can do, and that leads to a life of safety, but not satisfaction. There's a deeper fulfillment that comes from learning through failure. You start to build a real relationship with yourself. You stop expecting perfection and start appreciating progress. You start to see each misstep as information, not judgment. When something doesn't work, it gives you data. It tells you what to adjust, where to look closer, how to approach it differently next time. That feedback is valuable, but you only get the benefit of that feedback if you detach it from your worth. You're allowed to fail. You're allowed to try and get it wrong. That's part of the process of becoming someone who can get it right. Growth doesn't happen in a straight line. It happens in cycles, and in those cycles, failure is one of the strongest forces of forward motion, if you let it be. You don't become less valuable because you fell. You don't lose your potential because you didn't succeed the first time. Those things are untouched by your results. What matters is what you do after. Do you learn, adjust, and keep going, or do you stop, retreat, and carry shame? One direction moves you forward. The other traps you in a story that isn't even true. Just because something ended in disappointment doesn't mean it ended your ability to grow. When you internalize failure, you carry it into everything you do. You start making choices based on fear of repeating the past. You hold back in conversations. You doubt your ideas. You hesitate to take action. And without realizing it, you start shrinking into a version of yourself that feels safer but less alive. That's what happens when you let failure become identity. It's not the failure itself that limits you. It's the story you build around it. You need to tell a better story. One where setbacks are stepping stones. One where every mistake is a lesson. One where you are not defined by the worst moments, but by how you rose from them. That's the only way to move forward without dragging old pain behind you. Everyone stumbles, but not everyone learns how to stand back up with strength. That takes self-awareness. That takes intention. That takes courage. If you can get up after a failure and try again with a clearer understanding, you're not behind, you're ahead, because now you're working with more insight. You're building resilience. You're training your mind to stay steady through challenges. That's the kind of strength that lasts, not the kind that hides from failure, but the kind that's shaped by it. The kind that says, I've been through hard things, and I didn't stop. Every time you fail, you're being offered a choice. You can either hide from it, or use it. You can pretend it didn't happen, or you can study it. You can beat yourself up, or you can speak to yourself like someone worth helping. That inner conversation shapes your ability to grow. The more compassion you show yourself after a setback, the faster you'll recover. Not because you're ignoring the problem, but because you're refusing to turn it into a sentence about who you are. You don't need to carry guilt just because something didn't work out. You don't owe the world perfection. What you owe yourself is the willingness to stay in the process, to take responsibility without shame, to examine what went wrong without letting it define your value. That's how you grow from failure, by facing it directly, without judgment, and letting it shape your strategy, not your self-worth. There's a version of you who hasn't yet arrived, and you can't meet that version by staying where it's comfortable. You get there by going through things that test your limits, challenge your beliefs, and occasionally knock you down. That's the path. That's how you earn wisdom, not by avoiding the fall, but by getting better at standing up after it. Failure isn't something to fear, it's something to understand. It shows you where the gap is between what you want and what you currently know or do. That gap is the exact space where growth lives. But you can only reach into it if you stop seeing failure as proof that you're not enough. You are not your mistakes. You are the one who decides what they mean. If you treat every failure as a dead end, you'll give up too soon. If you treat it as a message, you'll know where to go next. No one wins without loss. No one grows without struggle. The most successful people have failed the most times because they've tried the most things, and each time they came back wiser, more prepared, more grounded. That's the pattern that leads to lasting progress, and it's available to you, but you have to be willing to see failure as a necessary part of becoming stronger, not as a reflection of your identity. Give yourself the freedom to fail forward. Let go of the pressure to be flawless. Focus on what you're learning, not just what you're achieving. The more you practice this mindset, the lighter your steps will feel. You won't carry so much fear into each decision. You'll move faster, you'll risk more, you'll recover quickly. And over time, you'll realize something powerful. Failure didn't break you. It built you, because you used it, instead of running from it. Because you chose growth over shame. Because you remembered that who you are is not what happened, but what you choose to do next. Chapter 12. Reset your focus by creating a simple morning routine. How you begin your day has more power than most people realize. The first hour after you wake up shapes your ability to stay clear, present, and focused for everything that follows. If you start the morning scattered, scrolling, or rushed, that energy carries through your decisions. But if you begin your day with a small, steady rhythm, you create control. You take ownership of your time, your state of mind, and your direction. One of the easiest ways to reset your focus is to remove noise first thing in the morning. Don't grab your phone. Don't check messages or scroll through other people's lives. You're training your brain to either react to the world or create your own. Choose creation. Give yourself a quiet moment to breathe, to think, to be still. It might feel unfamiliar at first, especially if you've lived in constant stimulation for a long time, but the stillness is where clarity grows. You don't have to meditate for an hour or read a book every sunrise. You just have to be present with yourself before the day begins, pulling you in different directions. Maybe it's sitting in silence with a glass of water. Maybe it's stepping outside for a minute of fresh air. Maybe it's writing down one thought that matters to you. These small choices ground your mind and give you space to listen to what actually needs your attention. Focus is not about doing more, it's about doing less, but doing it with purpose. A simple routine helps you narrow your attention before the distractions flood in. You begin to protect your time more naturally. You say yes with more care. You say no without guilt, because you've started the day by choosing yourself instead of being pulled into everyone else's needs. When your morning begins with something that centers you, your decisions later in the day come from a calmer place. You don't rush to solve problems. You don't jump from one task to another without finishing anything. You start to move with more awareness. That awareness is what creates consistent progress. It's not dramatic or loud, it's steady and clear. It comes from a mind that isn't clouded by urgency from the moment it wakes up. A simple routine also removes the pressure to always feel motivated. You don't need to feel inspired every morning to follow through. You just need a plan that's easy enough to repeat. When your routine is too complex, it falls apart under stress. But when it's built on a few solid actions, it becomes your anchor, even when you feel tired. Even when life feels uncertain, you still have a starting point. You might feel resistance at first. Changing your habits isn't easy, but this isn't about waking up earlier or being productive for the sake of it. It's about giving yourself the gift of intention. 5 minutes of clarity is better than 30 minutes of distraction. Start where you are. If all you can do is sit for a minute before reaching for your phone, start there. If you can stretch your body for 5 minutes or drink a glass of water mindfully, let that be enough. Build slowly. Don't expect perfection. Some mornings will feel off. Some days you'll slip into old habits. That doesn't mean you failed, it just means you're human. What matters is that you come back to the routine again and again. Over time, your mind will begin to expect it. It will start preparing for focus as soon as you open your eyes. That's how change happens. Not in one big breakthrough, but through steady repetition. You might notice that when your mornings are structured, you start making better decisions throughout the day. You're more likely to follow through on what matters. You waste less energy on things that don't. That's because your brain is no longer starting the day scattered. It has a path, and that path gives you a stronger grip on how you use your attention. If you feel overwhelmed often, start looking at your mornings. That first hour is your reset button. It's your chance to break the momentum of burnout and build something cleaner, calmer, and more centered. You don't have to fix everything at once. Just focus on building 1 or 2 habits that give your mind a moment of stillness before everything begins. What works for one person may not work for another. Your routine should feel like something you look forward to, not something you dread. So design it around your own needs. If movement helps you wake up, stretch. If writing clears your head, journal. If silence helps you breathe, don't fill the air with noise. The goal isn't to copy someone else's routine, it's to create one that brings you back to yourself. A focused mind doesn't happen by accident. It's built by intention and protected by habit. And the more you honor that first part of your day, the more you reclaim your ability to lead the rest of it. Don't wait for the world to calm down before you create calm within yourself. Use your mornings to practice focus before the demands start piling up. Your attention is your most valuable resource. Don't give it away before you've decided how you want to use it. Let your mornings remind you who you are before the world tries to tell you. Let them be a space where you're not trying to catch up, but starting from strength. That shift changes everything, not instantly, but steadily, quietly, deeply. Start small. Keep it simple, be consistent, and trust that each focused morning builds a clearer, stronger version of you, one that doesn't need chaos to feel alive, but clarity to feel powerful. That version of you already exists. You just need a few quiet minutes each day to meet them. Chapter 13. Build mental toughness by staying calm under stress. Stress is a part of life you can't completely avoid. It shows up in hard conversations, unexpected news, tight deadlines, and moments when everything feels uncertain. But how you respond in those moments is what defines your strength. Mental toughness isn't about being emotionless or unaffected. It's about keeping your balance when everything around you feels unsteady. And that begins with learning how to stay calm when pressure rises. Calmness is a skill, not a personality trait. It's something you develop through practice. In moments of stress, your body reacts quickly. Your heart races, your thoughts speed up, and your breath shortens. If you're not aware of this shift, you get pulled into the reaction. You start to panic, overthink, lash out, or shut down. But if you train yourself to notice the early signs, you can interrupt the spiral before it takes over. When something triggers stress, the most powerful thing you can do is pause. Not for long, just long enough to catch your breath and give your mind a moment to catch up with your emotions. That tiny gap between the trigger and your response gives you back control. You're no longer being dragged by the moment. You're choosing how to respond to it. That's where mental strength begins. Calm doesn't mean you don't feel the weight of the situation. It means you don't let the weight crush your clarity. Some of the strongest people are the ones who can sit with fear, frustration, or uncertainty without letting it rule their next move. They aren't superhuman. They've just trained themselves to breathe before reacting, think before speaking, and wait before deciding. That discipline doesn't come from comfort. It comes from showing up again and again in moments of stress without giving in to chaos. Start by paying attention to your breath. When stress hits, your breath becomes shallow and fast. That sends a signal to your brain that you're in danger. But when you slow your breathing deep and steady, you're sending a different message. I'm safe. I'm in control. I can handle this. This change in breath can shift your entire mindset, even in the middle of a storm. It doesn't solve the problem, but it gives you the focus to face it with a clearer head. People often think mental toughness means pushing harder or doing more, but often it's about doing less. It's about not reacting emotionally to everything that demands your attention. It's about not getting pulled into every argument, not jumping at every problem, not needing to prove anything every time you're challenged. Strength is the ability to stand still inside yourself while the world moves around you. That stillness gives you power. You don't always need to have the perfect answer. You don't need to fix everything instantly. You just need to hold your ground and stay connected to your values when the pressure builds. That's where real resilience is built. Not in the easy days, but in the moments when you feel stretched thin and still choose to remain steady. Some stress is loud and obvious, but a lot of it builds quietly over time. The more you ignore it, the more it sneaks into your thoughts and habits. You start snapping at people. You lose patience easily. You feel drained before the day even starts. That's why it's important to check in with yourself often. Ask, where am I carrying tension? Notice your jaw, your shoulders, your stomach. If your body is tight, your mind probably is too. Don't wait for a breakdown to reset. Use small pauses throughout the day to release the build-up before it controls you. Staying calm under stress isn't about being passive. It's about being deliberate. It means you take the time to see what's really happening before reacting to how it feels. Emotions are real, but they're not always accurate guides for action. A calm mind can hear the emotion without letting it decide everything. That's the edge that mental toughness gives you, the ability to stay logical in moments where others collapse under pressure. You don't need to suppress how you feel. You just need to learn how to carry it without letting it spill into everything else. You can feel fear and still move forward. You can feel frustration and still choose patience. You can feel overwhelmed and still take the next right step. That's what mental strength looks like in real life. Not the absence of struggle, but the ability to keep moving with composure despite it. One powerful shift you can make is to stop seeing stress as a threat and start viewing it as a challenge. When you see something as a threat, your mind becomes defensive. You shrink, you panic, and you try to escape. But when you see it as a challenge, your brain becomes alert. You rise to meet it. You become focused, not frantic. That shift changes the energy you bring to the situation. It reminds you that stress isn't always your enemy. It can also be a signal that you're growing, stretching, and building something important. You don't control everything that happens to you, but you always control your response. That truth gives you freedom. It means you're never fully at the mercy of your circumstances. You can train your mind to return to calm again and again, no matter how many times you get knocked off balance. It won't always be perfect, but each time you choose to breathe instead of explode, to reflect instead of react, to stay grounded instead of spiral, you're getting stronger. People who build mental toughness aren't special. They're consistent. They practice calmness daily, not just when things fall apart. They prepare for stress before it hits. They create habits that support their mind, rest, movement, reflection, so they don't reach the edge as easily. They set boundaries. They say no when needed. They don't pretend to be fine when they're not. But they don't let pain become their personality either. They feel everything and still show up with grace. You can do the same. You don't have to wait until you feel ready. You just have to start noticing how you respond to stress and decide to do one thing differently. Maybe it's how you breathe. Maybe it's the words you choose. Maybe it's how long you wait before reacting. Over time, these small shifts build a mind that doesn't break under pressure, but holds its shape and moves forward with clarity. And that kind of mind, that's where your real power lives. Chapter 14. Do hard things early before the day controls you. Most people wait until they feel motivated to take on hard things, but motivation rarely shows up when you need it most. It comes and goes. If you build your life around waiting for it, you'll keep delaying what actually moves you forward. The truth is, your brain wants to avoid discomfort, and it's great at coming up with reasons why now isn't the right time. That's why starting your day with the hardest thing isn't just about productivity. It's about training your mind to stop running from challenge and start leaning into it. When you begin your morning with something difficult, you're sending a clear message to yourself. I am in charge of what happens next. You're not being led around by tasks, distractions, or moods. You're choosing to take control of your energy, your time, and your direction. That one early decision creates momentum that carries you into the rest of the day with more strength and clarity. The hardest things are usually the ones we avoid, because they force us to face something uncomfortable. Maybe it's a task you've been putting off. Maybe it's a conversation you've been avoiding. Maybe it's a personal goal that scares you. But the longer you delay it, the heavier it becomes. It sits in your mind, taking up space and draining your focus. You carry it all day, knowing it still needs to be done, and that weight slowly builds into stress. But if you flip it, if you take on that thing first thing in the morning, you free yourself from that mental drag. Suddenly, the rest of the day feels lighter. You don't have to fight against resistance anymore because you've already broken through it. You stop waiting for the right mood to begin and start using action to shift your mood. That's the power of doing the hard thing early. It sets your tone. This doesn't mean you have to wake up and tackle your entire to-do list. It means you pick one thing that matters and challenges you, and you face it head-on before the world starts pulling at your attention. That quiet window in the morning before texts, emails, and interruptions show up is where your focus is at its peak. It's where you're most likely to follow through because nothing has distracted you yet. Use that space wisely, and you'll realize how much power you've been handing away by delaying what matters. The people who move ahead in life aren't necessarily smarter or more talented. They've just built the habit of doing the hard things without needing to feel ready. They don't debate it. They don't argue with themselves. They wake up, they begin, and they let the process shape their day. That kind of mental discipline doesn't come from having everything figured out. It comes from choosing consistency over comfort. There's a difference between being busy and being intentional. You can fill your day with 100 easy tasks and still go to bed feeling like nothing meaningful got done. Or you can do one uncomfortable high-impact thing in the morning and feel the difference it makes for hours. That's the shift. Working with purpose, not just activity. Starting with what's hard forces you to be clear about what truly matters, because hard things are often the things that drive real change. If you let the day decide how your energy gets used, it will drain you with noise. You'll spend time reacting, putting out fires, answering messages, and solving problems that feel urgent but aren't important. By the end of the day, your best energy is gone, and the thing you really needed to do, it's still waiting. That's why doing the hard thing early isn't just a productivity tactic, it's a way to reclaim your direction before distractions steal it. You can't control everything that happens in a day, but you can control how you start it. That's your anchor. When you face the hard thing first, everything else becomes more manageable. You've already proven to yourself that you're capable of doing what's difficult. That belief carries over into the next task, and the next. Your confidence isn't built on hype, it's built on evidence, and the best way to collect that evidence is by showing up when it's hardest. Some mornings you'll feel resistance. You'll want to delay. You'll hear the voice that says, "Do it later, you're too tired," or "It's not that urgent." That voice is always loud right before the moment you grow. Your job isn't to argue with it, it's to act anyway. You don't need to feel motivated to start, you just need to move. Even one small action chips away at the resistance, and once you begin, everything changes. The hardest part is starting. Once you take that first step, your mind shifts from avoidance to engagement. It starts solving problems instead of running from them. The discomfort you feared shrinks. You realize the task isn't as overwhelming as you imagined. It was the avoidance that made it feel that way, and that realization builds a stronger mindset every time you experience it. Imagine how different your life would feel if every day you faced one thing that made you uncomfortable. Just one. Over time, your tolerance for discomfort would grow, your confidence would rise, your ability to handle pressure would improve. You'd stop being so easily thrown off course by stress or fear, because every day you'd be proving to yourself that you can do hard things and not just survive them, but get stronger because of them. The day will always try to take your focus. There will always be something urgent, something easier, something louder, but those things rarely lead to progress. What leads to progress is the thing you know you should be doing but haven't started yet. The thing that feels big or scary or uncertain, that's the one you need to face before anything else. Not because it's convenient, but because it's necessary. Every time you choose to do the hard thing early, you're building a habit that reshapes your future. You're becoming someone who leads, not someone who reacts. You're building trust in yourself, and you're creating a rhythm that keeps you grounded even when the rest of the day spins out of control. You don't need a perfect system. You don't need a complicated plan. You just need to wake up, look at what matters, and begin with what challenges you most. That single decision made daily has the power to transform not only your productivity, but your sense of purpose. Because when you stop waiting and start doing, you stop living at the mercy of time and start using time to build something real. Chapter 15. Challenge yourself weekly with one difficult task. Most people go through their weeks doing what feels familiar. They do what's safe, what's comfortable, and what they already know how to do, and they repeat it again and again, waiting for something to change. But growth doesn't happen when you stay inside your usual rhythm. It begins the moment you interrupt that rhythm on purpose and do something that stretches your limits. You don't need to overhaul your entire life overnight. What you need is one difficult task each week that pulls you out of what's easy and pushes you into what's possible. The purpose isn't to chase pressure. It's to face resistance in a focused way, with one clear target. That task might look different every week. Sometimes it's physical, sometimes it's mental, sometimes it's something you've avoided for far too long. But every time you take it on, you're giving your mind and your character a new challenge to grow through. You're not just getting better at the task, you're becoming a stronger person who doesn't hesitate when things get uncomfortable. You could keep doing the same things you've always done. You'll stay in control, feel less risk, and avoid failure. But you'll also stay stuck in the same patterns. You'll keep solving the same kinds of problems, thinking the same thoughts, and repeating the same results. And slowly, you'll start to lose the sharp edge that makes life exciting. That's what happens when you stop being challenged. You stop feeling alive. You stop remembering that you're capable of more than what you've settled into. Setting one hard task every week is a simple way to stop that drift. It brings intention back into your routine. It makes you question what you've been avoiding and gives you a reason to confront it. It reminds you that discomfort is where your potential lives. You don't have to face 100 challenges all at once, but if you can look at the next 7 days and pick just one thing that demands more of you than you've given before, you'll begin to rebuild that sense of forward motion. Some weeks the task might be having a conversation you've delayed because you fear how it will go. Other weeks it might be saying no to something that drains your time or energy, even if it's uncomfortable to set that boundary. You might push yourself to learn a new skill, to fix a long-standing problem, or to make a decision that scares you. It doesn't matter what the task is. What matters is that it's real, that it costs you some effort, that it makes you a little nervous to even begin. That's where growth lives, in that moment of hesitation, where your old self wants to run and your new self says, try. That weekly challenge becomes a mirror. It shows you where you're still shrinking back. It shows you where you need more courage, more clarity, or more self-respect. And once you finish it, even if you don't do it perfectly, you walk away with proof that you're not the same as you were a week ago. You've done something you couldn't do last time. You've expanded. Progress isn't loud, it's quiet. It's hidden in decisions most people don't see. It's earned in private, not posted for applause. That's why weekly challenges are so powerful. They're not about showing off. They're about holding yourself to a higher standard than the one you lived by last week. That creates momentum, and over time, it changes the way you see yourself. You begin to expect more from your time. You stop wasting hours on things that don't stretch you. You start seeking out situations that teach you something new, rather than retreating into comfort. You start making decisions based on who you want to become, not just who you are now. And the amazing thing is, this shift doesn't require a dramatic change in your schedule. It just requires the discipline to choose one hard thing and commit to finishing it, no matter what. It's not about being perfect, it's about being honest. If a task beats you this week, that's okay. You come back stronger the next. The point isn't to succeed every time. The point is to become someone who keeps showing up to the hard things again and again without flinching. That's where confidence comes from. Not from never failing, but from proving to yourself that you don't run when things get tough. It doesn't matter how long you've played it safe. It doesn't matter how long you've hidden behind excuses or waited for the perfect moment. All it takes is a decision, one hard thing this week, and then do it again next week, and again. Stack enough of those weeks together, and you'll start to look back and barely recognize the person you used to be. Because that's what happens when you build this habit. Your mindset shifts. Your identity changes. You stop asking, "Can I do this?" and start saying, "Let me find out." You stop backing down when something's difficult and start leaning in. You stop reacting to life and begin directing it, one hard task at a time. You don't need to announce it. You don't need permission. You don't need a perfect plan. You just need the courage to pick something real and take action on it, even if it feels awkward or uncomfortable. Especially if it feels uncomfortable, because that's where the edge is, and the edge is where your next breakthrough lives. So look at your week. Be honest with yourself. What's one thing you've been avoiding? What's one challenge that would stretch you just enough to feel the resistance, but not enough to break you? That's the one. Write it down. Block time for it, and then do it. Chapter 16. Silence excuses by acting faster than you think. Most of the time, the problem isn't that we don't know what to do. The problem is that we hesitate. We hear the idea. We feel the urge. We recognize the opportunity. But instead of moving, we pause. We wait. We think. And in that space between the impulse and the action, excuses slip in. They're quiet, but convincing. You tell yourself it's not the right time. You tell yourself you're too tired, too unsure, not ready. And just like that, the moment passes. What could have been done in 5 minutes now becomes a weight you carry for the rest of the day. And the more you do this, the more you teach yourself that hesitation is safer than movement. But there's another way to live. It's faster, sharper, and more honest. It begins the moment you stop giving your mind the time to talk you out of what you already know is right. The moment you feel the impulse to take action, You take it. You don't analyze it. You don't overthink. You don't ask for extra time. You just move. That speed, however small, cuts through the noise. It doesn't give fear room to grow. It doesn't give doubt a chance to build a case. It shuts the door before the excuses can even form a sentence. You don't have to wait for motivation. You don't have to wait for energy. You don't need a full plan. What you need is a moment of courage before your mind floods with reasons not to act. Once you move even a little, momentum starts building. You begin the task. You make the call. You get out of bed. You press record. And the moment you're in motion, everything changes. You're not in the trap of hesitation anymore. You're in forward movement. And that state is where clarity and strength live. Think about how many moments you've lost to overthinking. Not hours, moments, seconds. But those seconds became minutes, then hours, then whole days, where nothing important got done. Now imagine what could shift in your life if you responded to your good instincts before your mind had the chance to kill them. That's the real discipline, not working harder, not planning more, but acting before excuses get a chance to take control. You can't remove hesitation completely. You're human. Your mind will always try to keep you comfortable. It will always push you toward what's familiar. But you can train yourself to stop giving hesitation the final word. Most people lose their battles before they even start. They lose because they hesitate. They think about all the things that could go wrong. They let their minds create problems that haven't even happened. But if you act quickly, you don't give those imagined problems power. Excuses can't survive movement. They depend on stillness. They feed on waiting, on planning, on perfectionism. But when you act quickly, you cut off their oxygen. You give yourself the advantage. You catch your resistance off guard. And the more you do it, the less power your excuses have over you. They still show up, but you don't listen to them anymore. You've proven that they're just noise that fades the second you take the first step. This doesn't mean rushing through life. It means deciding faster, doing what matters without dragging it out. You already know what needs to be done most of the time. The problem is the extra minutes you spend avoiding it. The longer you think, the louder your inner resistance becomes. But when you act fast, you don't get stuck in the loop of what-ifs. You get to the part where results live, and results don't come from thinking. They come from doing. This approach changes your identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who delays, someone who hesitates, someone who needs to feel ready. You become someone who moves, someone who trusts their instincts, someone who respects their time enough not to waste it on imaginary fears. That's a powerful shift, because once you believe that fast action is your default, you stop negotiating with your weaker self. You stop giving energy to thoughts that never deserved your attention in the first place. The reason this works is because you're not fighting yourself anymore. You're moving before the fight even starts. You're acting while the idea is still alive, before your fear has a chance to suffocate it. And that gap, the one between the impulse and the action, that's where all your excuses try to live. Cut that gap down, and the excuses die before they can grow. This doesn't mean being reckless. It means being honest. Honest about how often your delays are just fear in disguise. Honest about how many opportunities you've talked yourself out of because you waited too long. And honest enough to say, from now on, I won't give my excuses that kind of power. From now on, I act. Not tomorrow. Not when I feel ready. Right now. In this moment. Because the more I wait, the less I trust myself. But the more I move, the more I prove to myself that I am in control. Not my fears, not my doubts, not my old habits. You don't need to be faster than everyone else. You just need to be faster than your excuses. That's the race that matters. Every time you beat them, even by a second, you grow stronger. You become the kind of person who doesn't freeze when it's time to move. You become someone others can rely on. But more importantly, you become someone you can rely on. Start with something small. The next time you think, I should do that, stop thinking, move. Do it. Don't give yourself a speech. Don't scroll through your phone. Don't tell yourself you'll do it in 10 minutes. Just act. And feel what that moment does to your confidence. Feel how it rewires your relationship with hesitation. One decision at a time. That's how you build a different future. That's how you break the loop of overthinking. That's how you silence the part of you that always wants to wait. You act faster than you think. You close the gap. You stop the delay. And you take control of your time, your focus, and your life. Chapter 17. Raise your standards by expecting more from yourself. Most people don't fail because they're not talented enough. They fail because they tolerate too much from themselves. They accept weak effort. They let themselves coast. They lower the bar when things get uncomfortable. But the truth is, your life will only rise to the level of standards you set for yourself. Not the goals you write down, not the dreams you talk about, but the minimum level of behavior you allow from yourself every single day. That's where change starts, not with inspiration, but with expectation. If you want more, you have to expect more from yourself first. You have to stop accepting things from yourself that fall below the level of the life you claim to want. It's easy to point to circumstances. It's easy to blame the economy, the timing, the people around you. But if you're honest, you'll see that the real limits are internal. The truth is, most of your frustration comes from knowing you're not living at your highest level. You don't need anyone else to call you out. You know when you're cutting corners. You know when you're capable of more, and still choose less. That quiet knowing, that's the voice you need to start listening to. That's the standard you need to rise to. It's not about perfection. It's about refusing to let yourself keep repeating the same lazy patterns and then wondering why nothing changes. Raising your standards doesn't mean becoming harsh or self-critical. It means becoming honest. It means deciding that you're not going to keep accepting behaviors from yourself that you would never tolerate from someone else who claimed they were serious. It's about cleaning up the small things, the shortcuts, the half-finished commitments, the broken promises you make to yourself and pretend don't matter, because they do matter. Every time you let yourself off the hook, you weaken the trust you have in your own word. And when you stop believing yourself, everything else falls apart. You start raising your standards by getting tired of your own excuses. You stop waiting to feel motivated. You stop blaming outside forces, and you begin to see clearly that the person responsible for raising the bar in your life is you. No one else can do that for you. And the moment you accept that responsibility, everything becomes clearer. The path is simple. Stop doing what's beneath you. Start acting like the version of yourself you keep imagining. Not later, now. What you accept is what you continue. If you continue to accept average effort, then average results will follow. If you continue to allow your weaker impulses to make decisions, you'll continue to live at the level of your excuses, and that's the hard truth. Most people don't need more knowledge. They need to raise their personal standards. They need to start expecting more from themselves, not just when it's easy, but especially when it's hard. You don't raise your standards by shouting it out loud or writing it on a wall. You raise them by doing what you say you'll do, consistently, quietly, with no need for attention. You stop skipping the hard parts. You stop lowering your effort just because no one's watching. You don't let your feelings run the show. You start expecting that you'll show up fully, even on the days you don't want to, because that's what separates people who build real progress from those who just talk about it. There's a kind of pride that comes from this way of living, not arrogance, but strength. You begin to carry yourself differently when you know you won't let yourself off the hook so easily. Your confidence doesn't come from pretending you have it all together. It comes from knowing that your word means something to you. It comes from building a track record with yourself. And that feeling of being dependable to yourself is what allows you to demand more from life, because you're finally giving more to yourself. Raising your standards isn't about doing the impossible. It's about no longer tolerating the avoidable. The messes you've ignored, the laziness you've disguised as self-care, the lack of preparation you've convinced yourself is spontaneity. All of it adds up, and once you stop pretending those things don't matter, you can start to clean them up, not in one day, but one decision at a time. You don't need to make drastic changes overnight, but you do need to stop accepting things that go against your higher self. You need to stop making choices that shrink your future. Every time you choose comfort over commitment, you pay a price. Maybe not right away, but eventually the results will reflect it. So instead of asking for better results, ask for more from yourself. Ask for sharper effort. Ask for deeper focus. Ask for the kind of habits that reflect someone who takes their life seriously. There is nothing magical about people who achieve more. They've just learned how to expect more from themselves before anyone else does. They don't need constant motivation because their standards are internal. They don't rise and fall with the weather or their mood. They've trained themselves to show up regardless. And that's what makes the difference in the long run. That's what separates good intentions from real outcomes. You are capable of far more than you allow yourself to express. But capability is useless if it stays trapped inside comfort. You unlock it by making higher demands of yourself, not through pressure, but through precision, through waking up and deciding that today you're going to show yourself what you're really made of, and then actually following through. Not just once, but until that level becomes your new normal. This is a process. It's not about never slipping. It's about noticing when you do and correcting faster. It's about developing the kind of self-respect that no longer allows you to coast through life, hoping things will change without your full participation. It's about choosing to become the kind of person whose effort is strong enough to match their goals. And the more you live this way, the more natural it becomes. You stop looking for shortcuts, because you're more interested in becoming someone who can handle the long road. You don't raise your standards so you can impress anyone. You do it because you're tired of feeling stuck. You do it because you know your potential deserves better than your current habits. And most of all, you do it because you're ready to stop lying to yourself about what you're capable of. You're ready to stop settling. You're ready to stop coasting. You're ready to step up. That's where everything changes. The moment you decide that you will no longer live beneath your own potential, not for another day. Not because someone told you to, but because you finally had enough of the laziness, enough of the shortcuts, enough of the soft talk. You're done. From now on, you expect more, and because you expect more, you will do more, and because you do more, you will become more. That's how it works. That's how it begins, with one quiet, powerful decision. I will no longer accept less than my best. Chapter 18. Force progress by keeping promises you make alone. No one else hears the promises you whisper to yourself at night. No one claps when you say, "I'll start tomorrow." No one checks if you followed through on the goals you set in silence. That's what makes those private promises so powerful. They're the ones that show you who you really are, not who you pretend to be around others, not who you perform as in public, but who you are when no one is watching, and there's nothing to gain except self-respect. Keeping promises you make alone is how you force progress, not because someone's pushing you, not because someone's tracking you, but because you've decided your word to yourself finally means something. It's easy to keep promises when people are watching. External accountability is everywhere. Bosses, deadlines, expectations. But the promises that shape your future are the ones no one knows about. They're the ones that don't get applause. They don't have witnesses. They don't have pressure. And that's exactly why most people break them without thinking. It's easier to let yourself down in private because it doesn't seem to cost much in the moment. But over time, it costs everything. It costs your momentum, your belief in yourself, your ability to trust your own voice. Progress doesn't come from grand declarations. It comes from private discipline. It comes from the quiet hours where no one checks in, but you still show up. You said you'd wake up early. Did you? You said you'd stop procrastinating. Did you? You said you'd cut the excuses and start executing. Did you really do it? Or did you just say it because it sounded good in your head? The gap between your words and your actions is where your future is built. Every broken promise stretches that gap wider. Every kept one closes it. Eventually, the only way to move forward is to make your actions heavier than your talk. Most people stall out not because they lack the ability, but because they keep negotiating with themselves. They keep treating their personal promises like optional suggestions. They keep choosing temporary comfort over long-term growth. But here's the truth. Every time you break a promise to yourself, you chip away at your internal strength. You send a quiet signal to your brain that your own word can't be trusted. And the more you do that, the harder it becomes to believe in your ability to follow through, even when you're serious. But when you start keeping those silent promises, something begins to shift. You don't just make progress, you become progress. You stop waiting for motivation and build momentum instead. You stop needing to explain yourself because your results speak for you. There's a kind of unshakable power that comes from showing up for yourself consistently. Not loudly, not dramatically, just with steady, quiet action. You stop trying to impress and start trying to improve, and that's where things begin to move. Keeping your own promises is how you learn to trust yourself again. It's how you prove to your own mind that you're someone who follows through. You stop second-guessing your plans because you've trained yourself to act on them. And even when the results aren't immediate, the process begins to work. Because what matters isn't what you achieve today, it's what you become by keeping the commitment. The goal isn't to feel accomplished every day. It's to become the kind of person who refuses to leave themselves behind again. You'll have moments when quitting feels easier, when no one would know if you gave up early or skipped the hard parts, but those are the exact moments where real growth lives. That's when you either strengthen your discipline or weaken it. That's when you either prove to yourself that your word matters or you remind yourself that it doesn't. And if you want to become the person you say you want to be, then those little decisions, the ones no one sees, become everything. There's a different kind of freedom that comes when you stop needing validation, when you don't rely on reminders, when your drive doesn't come from fear of being judged, but from a deep internal standard you've set for yourself. And it starts when you tell yourself, I don't break promises to me anymore. I don't care who's watching. I don't care who notices. This isn't about performance, it's about progress. My word means something now, especially when it's spoken quietly. You don't need more motivation. You need to be someone who doesn't tolerate your own excuses anymore. You need to stop waiting for perfect conditions. Stop trying to feel ready. Stop using the lack of recognition as a reason to quit. You need to follow through because you said you would. You need to stop lying to yourself about tomorrow and start showing up today, right now, in the middle of the mess, without needing applause or comfort. This isn't about becoming a machine. It's about becoming someone whose actions finally match their values. Someone who no longer lives in the gap between intention and execution. Someone who understands that the gap between where they are and where they want to be will never close until they take their private commitment seriously. Because if you keep waiting to be held accountable by others, you'll keep waiting forever. But if you become accountable to yourself, nothing can stop you. That's how you force progress. You eliminate the gap between your intentions and your actions. You build a rhythm of showing up, no matter how small the task, no matter how tired you are. You build trust one action at a time. One early morning where you rise instead of snooze. One workout you push through even when you don't feel like it. One decision to finish the thing instead of dragging it out. And suddenly, momentum begins to work for you instead of against you. Self-respect doesn't come from what you promise in public. It comes from what you deliver in private. It's not about being perfect. It's about no longer tolerating your own lies. You know when you're capable of more. You know when you're slacking. You know when you're cutting corners. And every time you catch yourself and choose better, you're building someone stronger, someone more reliable, someone you're proud to be. There's no secret formula to progress. It's built in silence, in decisions no one claps for, in commitments that don't get recognition, in quiet rooms where you say, "I said I'd do it, so I'm doing it." That's where transformation starts. Not in the spotlight, but in the shadows. Not in the celebration, but in the unseen effort. And the more you keep your promises when no one's watching, the more powerful you become when everyone is. Chapter 19. Practice self-control by delaying what feels good now. Most people live by what feels good right now. They chase comfort, distraction, and easy pleasure because it's available fast and rewarding in the moment. But that kind of living creates a life that's stuck in place. Nothing meaningful is ever built from chasing the next thing that feels good. The truth is, growth begins the moment you decide that feeling good can wait. When you choose discipline over indulgence, you take control of your direction. When you delay what feels good now, you build a future you won't want to escape from. Self-control isn't about being rigid or cold. It's about understanding what's worth more, temporary satisfaction or lasting strength. Most temptations aren't dangerous because they're extreme. They're dangerous because they're subtle. 5 more minutes scrolling, 1 more excuse to skip the hard part. 1 more indulgence you say you'll make up for later. It's those tiny decisions that quietly steer your life off course, not the big ones. Practicing self-control means catching yourself in those small moments and making a different choice, one that aligns with your long-term goals instead of your short-term emotions. Every time you choose to delay comfort, you're training your mind to obey your values instead of your urges, and that's where power comes from. Not from force, not from motivation, but from consistently doing what's right, even when it's inconvenient, boring, or uncomfortable. That's where strength is built, not in the dramatic moments, but in the ordinary decisions that no one sees. Saying no when no one would blame you for saying yes. Holding back when no one would notice if you gave in. You won't always feel like doing the right thing. That's not weakness. That's normal. But if you wait to feel like it, you'll be waiting forever. The real test is what you do when you don't feel like it. When you're tired, when you're irritated, when pleasure is calling your name and no one's stopping you. That's where discipline either grows or dies. That's where you either rise above your impulses or become controlled by them. And most people don't fail because they're incapable. They fail because they choose the easy way too often and call it balance. There's nothing wrong with enjoyment. The problem is when enjoyment controls you. The ability to delay what feels good right now is the difference between a life that feels satisfying in the moment and one that actually goes somewhere. Because everything worth having takes time, it takes effort, it takes sacrifice. And you can't make space for those things if your time is filled with cheap pleasures that leave you empty afterward. Self-control is about making space for better things to come by, not letting immediate comfort crowd your life. You'll always have the option to take the shortcut, to eat what's easy, to do what's familiar, to say, just for today, even though you said that yesterday too. But when you start saying no, not because you hate yourself, but because you respect your future, you begin to move differently. You stop reacting and start choosing. You stop being a slave to your urges and become someone who directs their life intentionally. Delaying gratification doesn't feel exciting. It feels quiet. It feels like restraint when everyone else is indulging, but that's exactly why it works. While others are spending their energy on what they want right now, you're investing in who you want to become. While they're chasing ease, you're building the kind of self-respect that only comes from doing what's difficult. And over time, the gap between you and them widens. Not because you're better, but because you made better choices for longer. You'll never feel proud of yourself for giving in to something that set you back. You might feel good for a minute, but it always fades. What stays is the regret, the disappointment, the sense that you gave away your power. But every time you delay gratification, every time you say no to the shortcut, you gain something that lasts longer than a craving. You gain confidence. You prove to yourself that you're stronger than the voice that says, just this once. And the more you do it, the easier it becomes to hear that voice and keep walking anyway. Some days will be harder than others. Some moments will test you more than you expect. But self-control isn't about being perfect. It's about being consistent. It's about remembering that every time you choose growth over comfort, you're getting stronger, even if you don't see it yet. You don't need to be extreme. You just need to be steady. You just need to hold the line a little longer. And when you fall short, and you will, you don't let that become a reason to stop. You reset. You return to your values. And you keep going. The hardest part of self-control is that no one claps for it. No one celebrates you when you delay the cookie, when you skip the distraction, when you say no to the easy way out. But that's what makes it powerful. You're doing it because you've decided you matter. Your goals matter. Your future matters more than this moment. That kind of clarity changes the way you live. It changes the way you show up. You stop needing others to keep you on track because you've become your own standard. When you live with self-control, you don't just manage your impulses, you begin to shape your identity. You're no longer someone who just reacts to whatever life throws at you. You become someone who responds on purpose, someone who has vision, someone who makes decisions with the future in mind. And while that might not feel rewarding today, it creates a life filled with results, not just reasons. There's no trick to this. You don't need more hacks. You don't need more motivation. You need to stop letting temporary pleasure talk you out of permanent progress. You need to see through the comfort and realize what it's really costing you. Every time you say yes to what feels good now, you might be saying no to the person you're trying to become. And if that trade keeps happening, you'll never close the gap between where you are and where you could be. Your ability to delay gratification is your ability to live with power. Because when you can choose your actions instead of being ruled by them, you've already won. You've already moved from living by emotion to living by intention. And the more you practice that, the stronger your control becomes. It won't feel glamorous, but over time it will feel right. It will feel like strength. It will feel like freedom. So, when the moment comes, and it always will, where you want to give in, ask yourself, what am I really giving up by saying yes to this? What future am I putting on hold? And more importantly, who am I becoming every time I make this decision? That's the real question. Not how strong your craving is, but how serious you are about building a life you're proud of, because if you want to grow, you'll have to delay what feels good now. Not forever. Just long enough to let something better rise in its place. Chapter 20. Earn confidence by doing the hard thing repeatedly. Confidence is not something you stumble upon by chance. It is earned through consistent action, especially when that action involves doing what feels difficult or uncomfortable. Every time you choose the hard path and follow through, you build a foundation of trust in yourself that no external compliment or achievement can replace. This trust becomes the backbone of your confidence, making it stronger and more reliable over time. Confidence grows not because you avoid struggle, but because you face it head-on again and again, until it becomes part of who you are. Doing hard things repeatedly is the real training ground for courage. When you push through discomfort and choose to keep going, you send a clear message to your brain: I am capable, I am strong. The more you prove this to yourself, the less intimidating challenges become. Instead of fearing the unknown or avoiding difficult tasks, you begin to see them as opportunities to reinforce your strength. Confidence isn't about never feeling fear or doubt. It's about choosing action despite those feelings and building proof of your resilience. The key is consistency. One hard effort can give you a burst of motivation, but only repeated effort builds lasting confidence. Each time you confront difficulty, you lay down new neural pathways in your brain that make future challenges easier to face. This rewiring doesn't happen overnight, but with steady practice, you start to shift from avoiding tough situations to anticipating them with readiness. Your identity begins to align with persistence and strength, because your actions consistently reflect those qualities. It's important to understand that hard doesn't mean impossible. It means uncomfortable, unfamiliar, or challenging enough to test your limits. It could be waking up early, tackling a demanding project, having a difficult conversation, or sticking to a healthy habit when every part of you wants to quit. These actions stretch you. They push you beyond the safe zone, where confidence can't grow, and while the first few attempts might feel shaky or discouraging, the momentum built from showing up repeatedly makes those actions easier with time. Confidence earned this way is stable because it is rooted in experience. It is not based on external approval, luck, or fleeting success. When you earn your confidence through repeated hard work, it becomes a part of your character. You don't need to prove it to others because you know what you've been through. This internal confidence is what allows you to remain calm under pressure, to take risks when necessary, and to keep moving forward when setbacks come. It's a quiet power that doesn't demand attention, but commands respect. Facing hard things repeatedly also teaches humility. You realize that success is not a one-time event, but a journey filled with ups and downs. You learn to appreciate the process instead of just focusing on the outcome. Each difficult task completed adds to your skill set and mental toughness. You become more adaptable and less afraid of failure, because you know you have what it takes to recover and try again. This mindset is what true confidence is made of, not arrogance, but grounded belief in your ability to handle whatever comes. Building confidence through doing hard things also shifts your relationship with discomfort. Instead of running from it, you start to see discomfort as a sign that you are growing. You welcome the challenge because you understand that comfort zones are prisons for potential. Every hard moment you endure expands your capacity and proves your resilience. This doesn't mean seeking pain or suffering unnecessarily, but recognizing that growth requires struggle and accepting it as part of the process. A common trap is waiting to feel confident before taking on hard challenges. This is backward. Confidence comes from the action itself, not before it. Waiting for the right moment or perfect conditions only delays progress and allows doubt to grow. The real growth starts when you do the hard thing, despite fear or uncertainty. Each success builds on the last, creating a chain of experience that fuels your confidence. If you wait to feel ready, you may never start. But if you start, no matter how small the step, confidence will follow. To cultivate this habit, set clear, achievable challenges for yourself and commit to facing them regularly. Don't just do what's easy or convenient. Choose tasks that test you. This might mean dedicating time to difficult learning, pushing physical limits, or confronting uncomfortable truths in relationships. The important part is not perfection, but persistence. Keep doing the hard things, and you will notice a gradual but undeniable increase in your belief in yourself. Celebrate the small wins along the way, but don't let them become excuses to stop growing. Confidence isn't a finish line, it's a continuous journey of proving yourself right when doubt tries to take over. Each repeated act of courage strengthens your sense of identity as someone who doesn't back down. It rewires your brain to expect success because you've earned it through action, not wishful thinking. Ultimately, confidence earned by doing hard things repeatedly frees you from the fear of failure. You become someone who trusts their capacity to handle challenges, adapt, and improve. This trust transforms your approach to life. You take initiative rather than waiting for permission or reassurance. You accept responsibility rather than making excuses. You move forward with clarity because you know you've built a foundation strong enough to support your ambitions. The choice to do hard things over and over is a commitment to yourself. It is a declaration that your growth matters more than momentary ease, that the discomfort you feel today is the price you pay for the strength you'll have tomorrow. And when you keep that commitment, confidence no longer feels like a distant goal. It becomes your daily reality.